Photos from Pierce Brosnan's past expose another side of the actor's life. Pierce Brosnan will be forever celebrated for his suave portrayal of James Bond. The handsome actor is the definition of a megastar, but he wasn't always slated to be a celebrity. In fact, his early life was incredibly rough. Hurt and neglected by those he trusted most, the young boy had to fight his way out of his small town. He made it out, but not without receiving some emotional scars that he hid for decades. Many fans don't realize that this famous British spy isn't actually British. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, County Louth, Ireland, at the Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital. Small-town life suited the new family, but Pierce's days in Drogheda were numbered. The family later settled in Navan, County Meath, where Pierce's father was a carpenter and his mother was a homemaker. He made a good group of friends at St. Anne's Primary School, but his family was constantly struggling. When Pierce was a baby, his father left the family forever. His mother had nowhere to go, so she moved to London to pursue a nursing career, but that meant Pierce was left behind. Just like James Bond is an orphan, Brosnan found himself parentless. Since his mother moved to London, Pierce ended up being raised largely by his maternal grandparents, Philip and Kathleen Smith. It was the last time living with his mom. He hoped to put down roots, but he was destined to keep moving, over and over again. Pierce's grandparents died when he was still an adolescent. He moved in with his aunt and uncle, but it didn't last. Before he had time to settle, they sent him off to boarding school. Without anyone to guide him during his early years, the actor reflected, "So, in many respects, I created my own self." Later, Pierce would recall having a fairly solitary childhood. If it wasn't his father who left, it was his mother's absence, then his grandparents' death. It was hard to adjust to all the death and change, and something else about his background was holding him back further. Meanwhile, the Catholic aspect of Pierce's life loomed in the background, and not just because he was an altar boy. To be Catholic in the 1950s, and to be Irish Catholic in the 1950s, and have a marriage which was not there, a father who was not there, consequently, the wife suffered greatly, he said. In fact, he had some nuanced views about his distant mom. Pierce added that his mother was very courageous. She was the type of woman who did what was necessary to secure a life for both herself and her son. But as a result of all her work, she only came home a couple times every year. He had to learn to fend for himself. On August 12, 1964, Pierce finally left Ireland. The first thing he did was reunite with his mother. It had been years and they'd both missed out on so much, but something big had changed. When Pierce and his mother reunited, she had already married again. Her husband's name was William Carmichael, and they were both living in the Scottish village of Longniddry. Besides giving the boy a bit more stability, Carmichael made one move that changed his life, and movie history, forever. At this time, Pierce harbored no fantasies that he would go on to play James Bond, let alone act at all. Actually, he wasn't even familiar with 007 for much of his childhood. His first introduction to the series happened when he was 11, and it was thanks to his new stepdad. William Carmichael was a fan of the Bond movies and wanted to share his passion with his new stepson. One night he took young Pierce to see the 1964 Bond flick Goldfinger, starring the legendary Sean Connery. Fate would handle the rest. When Pierce came of age, he finally moved to the biggest city in his world at the time, London. He studied at Eliot School, a state comprehensive school in Putney, southwest London. Though he was an independent spirit, he was nervous about being a little fish in a big pond. Pierce later recalled what the move to London was like. When you go to a very large city, a metropolis like London, as an Irish boy of 10, life suddenly moves pretty fast. And his competitive classmates weren't always so kind to him either. Pierce also remembers people pointing out his ethnic identity, and "You're Irish. And they make you feel it." The British have a wonderful way of doing that, and I had a certain deep sense of being an outsider. Pierce was making life work, but he still decided to leave school for good at 16, well, at least normal school. He still wanted to learn, but less about math and science and more about art. Pierce decided that he wanted to be a painter and enrolled at St. Martin's School of Art to study commercial illustration. His ambition was strong, but Pierce would prove to be easily distracted. The acting bug just wouldn't leave him alone. While attending a play rehearsal at an off-West End theater, Pierce saw a fire eater teaching people how to perform tricks. After doing some himself, he decided to pursue acting for 3 years at Drama Centre London. And it's a good thing he did. Pierce recalls his foray into acting. It was a stepping stone into another life, away from a life that I had, and acting was something I was good at, something which was appreciated. That was a great satisfaction in my life. And the role of a certain handsome crime stopper was just around the corner. But it wasn't James Bond. After building up enough heat, Brosnan won the lead role in the crime drama Remington Steele, which introduced him to mainstream audiences. It also caught the eye of Bond producer Albert R. Broccoli, who thought Pierce could be the next 007. But it wasn't that easy. The Irishman met with Broccoli on the set of For Your Eyes Only, which starred the aging Roger Moore as Bond. He told Brosnan that he could have the role if he wanted it, except that his Remington Steele contract had him tied up for the rest of the 1980s. With no other choice, Pierce had to miss on the role of a lifetime. Fortunately, Pierce got another shot. After Timothy Dalton stepped back from the role, Pierce was able to make his Bond debut over a decade after his initial meeting with Broccoli. GoldenEye rejuvenated the tired franchise, and Brosnan returned for 3 more missions after that. His life has been a thrill ride since then. Besides taking interesting detours like Mrs. Doubtfire and Mamma Mia, the action star also turned his attention into raising a beautiful family. He's been determined to give his kids a more stable upbringing. As a matter of fact, he's not the only Bond star who had to rough it early on before finding film glory.